Hey people, welcome back to the Duff Radio Podcast. I know it's been a little while, but I am Ty McDuffie, your host. I'm talking to you live from Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri, and I want to take this opportunity to update all of you in the audience as to what's happened over the last 6 months of my life, where Duff Radio is at as a platform, and what the future is going to look like here. The last time I spoke to you all was on a solo podcast. I was living in Lecompton, Kansas, a little bit outside of Lawrence, and I was commuting into Kansas City to do a little bit of work with the guys. Since then, I have moved to Lake of the Ozarks, which is my hometown. For those of you who met me during my Kansas City journey, I am from Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri. I grew up in a really small town called Camdenton. Today it has about 4,000 people to it. When I was growing up, it was even smaller than that. But I'm back here, and I live next door to my sister now. I spent the last 7 months working day in and day out, building a new house. And that's where I'm living at right now with my family, with my young son. I've recently figured out that I'm going to have my second child, so that is a major life change for me, and that'll be on my plate going forward. There's not nearly as much creative infrastructure here at Lake of the Ozarks as there is in a bigger city like Kansas City. For example, very little rap or hip-hop scene. Not a ton of music in general coming out of Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri, and we aim to change that by being in this area. There are a lot of opportunities that I have here that I might not have been able to access in Kansas City. Let me explain. I've had the goal for Duff Radio Studios basically since the beginning of this journey. I've wanted to open up a studio, be able to record music out of it, and most importantly, be able to finally have a home for the podcast. Have an in-person studio where I can interview people and have a nice, fresh space to interact with others. And I think we'll eventually have that here. I'll have the space to build up some furniture, build up a room, get better sound quality than what I've had in the past. And so I'm super excited about that. I'm excited about the opportunity to record audio myself, use some of my own audio engineering skills. In the past, when I've been in the studio with friends and co-workers, it's really been two guys who have done most of the recording, and that is Connor and Jace. And so, being here outside of the city, I'm going to have a chance to build up more of a clientele for myself as an audio engineer, as a music producer, as a podcast host, as a videographer. All of these opportunities really excite me right now, and I'm definitely going to do a better job of keeping you guys up to date with what's going on in my life and what I'm doing as I'm building this platform. The reason that I haven't done any podcasts is because I haven't had any space in the last 6 to 7 months. Really, the best place for me to record was in my parents' garage, where I stayed in the process of getting this house built, but I didn't love the audio quality in there, and if I'm not just doing these solo podcasts, I really want to interview people in person. I've done the whole interview people over Google Meets before, and I do like it. It's a unique way to connect with people across the globe, and it's not every day that you can just be in a room with people, so I get that. But for the future of this broadcast going forward, I want to be talking on real mics, having conversations with people who are in the room with me face to face. And if I can't do that, then I'm not going to record interviews. And so I took some time off from the podcast over the last 6 months and just let all of the work that we have put in over the last 5 years simmer. I know you guys don't have access to the stats in the same way that I do, but it is absolutely mind-blowing for me to see the audience stats for the Duff Radio Podcast, because there are dozens of people out there every single week who have us in their headphones. And that is incredibly inspiring to me, and it makes me want to keep going because I know that we're impacting the world in strange and niche ways. You know, there are people out there in different countries entirely who have heard our music, who have heard our voices, who have listened to our conversations that we've had, and that's alchemy to me, that is magic to me. That's changing the experience that other people are having while they're wandering around this earth. And I have a ton of fun with that. I think it's really interesting. And so one of the main problems that we have addressed over the last 5 years is our distribution. I think we have that essentially solved. This podcast itself exists on Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, YouTube, Amazon, basically all of the major podcast platforms. So we figured that aspect out. We have a passive audience at this point. I think I could never publish anything again, and we would still have content running on repeat from the algorithm in the background the entire time. We have posted, I believe it's 800 videos to YouTube. Insane volume. And I think a lesson that can be learned from that is volume is going to win every single time. Volume beats talent. If you can just put out as much as possible without worrying so much about the quality, without worrying so much about the audience, without worrying so much about how it's going to be perceived, but instead just practice, get those reps. Figure out the differences between the online platforms. My God, that was a huge thing for me to learn. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Substack, all of these platforms are essentially the same, but they're different in how they operate, and they're different in the goals that they have. The individual algorithms prioritize different metrics. And I think it's important to experiment with all of those different platforms. Publish things on your own blog, on your own website, if you have one, or if you get a chance. And just see how different things perform. See what's good. See what resonates with your audience and what doesn't. And go from there. I said publish content on your website. Since about 2023, I've had this idea to create the Duff Radio the Duff Radio website. I've had the domain name purchased for over 5 years now. That shows you how far back I've gone with this idea. But I did not have the skill. I did not have the knowledge of web development to even attempt to make that immersive of a website as what exists on the internet right now. It was an incredibly difficult build and a unique build for so many different reasons. I'll try to just break down a couple of them. The first challenge that I had as a web developer in building the Duff Radio website was hunting down every piece of content that we have made together. Myself and different artists from Kansas City, my different friends from my childhood. We've published on SoundCloud extensively, YouTube extensively over the last 5 years. And so I had to embed all of those videos into the website. I had to track down our Spotify, get that embedded. Basically just the process of tracking down all of our work through all of the different platforms and getting it on one place. That was the first challenge. Now, AI makes these types of challenges more simple than what they would be if I was going at this on my own. Let's just leave it at that. I had access to Fable 5, which is a very powerful model from Anthropic, before it got shut down by the US government over the last week. And I went so nerd mode just grinding on my laptop for 72 hours straight, because I knew that I had access to truly special technology that I had never felt anything like it before. In all of my experience that I've had using these LLMs, Fable 5 from Anthropic was different because it takes such decisive action. I was able to use it to basically explain how I wanted that site, and it published something like 60 pages on its own, including a blog with 4 blog posts already done, and it published it for me. I'm using Cloudflare as my hosting, so I would have to go in and redeploy the site with each new edition that I generated with Claude. And Cloudflare is by far the easiest way to do that. I've done a lot of different web hosting. I first built my website in 2024, TyMcDuffie.com, and that is something that I built entirely by hand. Like, went and bought an old theme, which I don't think anybody does anymore, and I hand wrote every piece of content that's on the site. I used my own photography, my own design. I wanted it to have like a mountain, rugged feel, but I also wanted it to display some of my audio engineering traits and my podcast and some of my writing. So it's a really unique site, but it's completely different than the Duff Radio website, and the quality of it is much, much worse, I think, in terms of built by me with my relatively inexperienced hand versus God mode Claude developing things in minutes as opposed to what took me weeks. I've coded a few games over the course of my career and in the course of my experimentation with AI. That was the Kansas Cowboy game that I created with Jace Camden as the main character. Go play that. It's on the Duff Radio website. It's super fun. And there's also a Gittyman game that has to do with our Dungeon Synth album that we created. A 2-part series that we created in 2024 and 2025. Super niche knowledge right there. If you haven't listened to that project, you really should. I hired Gittyman back in the day to produce in a genre of music that I really, really like. It's called Dungeon Synth. And the idea behind that is it's like medieval music, knights back in the day in the dungeons. And it was kind of like a genre of movie in the 80s. And it's very inspired by those types of soundtracks. And it's super interesting to me because people have just taken it and run with it. There are entire Dungeon Synth record labels out there. There are people who are releasing projects left and right, and YouTube channels that pay homage to the artists of the past in the genre. So Gittyman is a hip-hop trap producer, and I wanted to see what he could do in a different lane. One of the things that I always try to do when I'm working with my music friends out of Kansas City is push them creatively and challenge them to do something new. And I love working with Gittyman because he always accepts those challenges and he's just willing to work, period. He just gets the job done. And that's why we've done so much work together. If you go back on our YouTube page, you'll see that we have type beats. What are type beats? Another way that YouTube channels get a ton of views just by publishing music, and writers out there on the internet will go out on YouTube and search for the type of beat that they want to write to or that they want to record to. So we have some West Coast type beats. We have some plug type beats, like early SoundCloud, hip hop, trap, rap, cloud rap type beats that live on the Duff Radio YouTube page. Check those out as well. Jace Camden has a couple of mixes that we've done instrumental wise. So I've had the idea for those games for months and months. And I've just fed the core code that I developed into these different AI models over time. Like, I'm pretty sure I refined the code for the Jace Camden game at least 4 or 5 times using, at first, Claude. Then ChatGPT started winning the AI race, so I fed it into ChatGPT, then fed it back into Claude, then fed it into Grok, then fed it into Claude again. And Fable 5 really hit a home run and developed it into an entire game that's playable on a browser and playable on a phone. Just absolutely insane. And that lives on the Duff Radio Arcade on the website right now. That website is so unique. It's not something that you can find on social media. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into this concept right now. Your social media page, you don't own it. The platform owns it. Instagram owns your Instagram page, even if you have thousands of followers on there. And they can delete you. They can boot you right off of it. They can throttle your content. They can show your content to 4,000 people one day and 4 people the next, depending on what you're posting. And in order to get your message across in a lot of ways, you have to kind of play the social media game. You have to game the algorithm. That can mean being gimmicky. That can mean selling yourself out. That can mean making content that works for one platform but absolutely flops on another. So we're all navigating this game right now, just trying to get attention. And why do you need attention for what you're doing? It's worth asking yourself. I would hope that the answer to that is pushing towards a product or pushing towards a service where you can be paid and compensated for it. Because attention just for attention's sake, attention just for the dopamine hits of likes and notifications on your phone, it feels good. It feels like you're being productive. It looks like you're being productive because the number of followers you have and the number of views you're getting goes up. It's the gamification of social media, as my friend PK Waves said on one of our podcast episodes. That's another guy who I've interviewed recently, and he's from my hometown. So it's all just been a process of digging back into my roots, figuring out who I am here as an adult. And part of that is taking what I've grown in my early 20s and shepherding it along further. Not being attached to one place, not being attached to one group of people. I've been in a lot of different places over the last 5 years, and I've learned just to go with the flow and be where life takes me, because I'm not always going to understand why I needed to be in a certain time and place in order to learn the lesson that I needed to learn at that time. It's impossible to predict what that might be when you're going through the life circumstances that you might be going through. But in a lot of cases, with time and with wisdom, you start to see a clearer picture as to what picture the universe is painting for you and who you need to become in order to go further ahead in your story. So in my case right now, that's being relatively isolated at Lake of the Ozarks, away from my friends that I have in Kansas City, the great artists that I've built relationships with through interviewing them. That is away from New Mexico, my home in the desert in the mountains where I've lived for the last 2 years. That is away from Lawrence on the plains of Kansas, which I enjoyed greatly. I've made a full circle, turning 29 years old. I believe is it Jupiter or Saturn that returns at 29? I would have to look it up to know 100%, but it's essentially like a cycle of your life coming to completion. I think it's probably the first third or fourth of a person's life kind of comes to a close around that age, 29, 30. And it's worth doing some reflection as to where we've been and how far we've come and how much we've changed over the years, and that it's okay to change. In fact, if you are not changing, you're not growing, you're stagnant, and that leads to death. All things are constantly changing. It's one of the laws of the universe. You see that in a couple different ways. I mean, the seasons are one of them. They're constantly in flux. And life and death, everything is constantly being cycled through this process, this evolutionary process where things are getting better and better, and life continues to evolve and become more adaptable. So we're going to open up a studio here, and we're going to continue to do the podcast. In all likelihood, we'll record and get to know a bunch of different artists from southern Missouri, which will be new. It'll be fresh. It'll be a change up. Something that I have not done before is covered an area this small and covered my hometown. It'll be extremely interesting. The smallest place that I did cover was Hardin in Montana. That was a town that was even smaller than this by a lot, but I'm recognizable here in my home community, so that's different. I'm carrying a lot more responsibility with a family, and that has pushed me to do a lot better. I mean, my circumstances here are better than they were when I was doing a lot of moving around over the years, not staying in any place for longer than a year for basically 10 years. So it was time to come home. It was time to really set down some roots and begin to apply the knowledge that I've been out in the world collecting. Another way that I plan to do this personally is through opening a kickboxing gym. There's not a dedicated kickboxing gym in my area, so I went ahead and opened up a Linn Creek Kickboxing Club. That's another website that I built with Claude, and it did not take any time at all. I fed it exactly what I wanted, and I learned a ton about web development and business through this process because I knew that for a website to be successful, it has to find a way to show up on Google. And even more importantly, it needs to show up on AI search. So the way to guaranteed make that happen is go on any LLM of your choice. Mine is Claude. But I realize that there are others out there that might be just as good, and I just have a preference for Claude. But I run deep research on every single keyword that I would need to have in my web copy to show up for every conceivable search term that a customer might have in my geographic region. So in my case, that's going to be like Linn Creek Kickboxing, Camdenton Kickboxing, Fight Gym near me, Lake of the Ozarks boxing gyms, things like that. And that applies to Duff Radio too, because I did the same thing. I mean, it's these search terms that you want to show up for. And that's worth thinking about for your branding individually, for your branding for your business, for your branding as an artist, is just what terminology are you using online to refer to yourself as? Are you training the algorithm to associate you with what you actually want to be associated with so that it's easier to find you? And so that the algorithm is not confused as to who you are. And this stuff is easier to game than ever, guys. I read something that was like, you can post as few as 13 words on Reddit and begin to manipulate the AI search results that Google gives you. So just to make a crazy example up off the top of my head, could you say something like, okay, Ty McDuffie is a pro volleyball player, and I just post something about that in the right subreddit and convince Google over time that I am actually a pro volleyball player in such a fashion that the AI overviews that we're all starting to get when you type stuff in on Google, that it would actually start to say that I am a pro volleyball player. They're saying that it takes as few as 13 words for that to start occurring. I mean, that's like 2 sentences, and anybody can post that on Reddit. It takes 10 seconds. So we are getting into this era of a believability crisis, but it's also an era where you can get more out of the internet than ever before if you understand how these systems work that are in place now. So being here in my hometown in a smaller area where things are spread out a lot more, there's opportunity that comes with that. There's first mover advantage that comes with that. For example, there's a bunch of controversy about AI at Lake of the Ozarks and these data centers that are starting to pop up all around the country. I wanted first mover advantage. Same thing with the Duff Radio website, same thing with the Linn Creek Kickboxing Club website. All built with Fable 5. That's the one thread that holds them all together. They're built with Fable 5 incredibly quickly. You need to move quickly, especially in business, but in all aspects of life. Just move fast. Get reps. Get an MVP, a minimum viable product, and get it out to the world. Because it's so easy to just sit in your mind and stall and have ideas and think them through and carry on these ideas for months and months and months, but never act on them. And I think the universe is like, I don't even know. It's like a hot soup, a swamp that's just waiting for ideas to be impregnated into it. And when those ideas are in your mind, that means the universe is fertile. It's waiting. It's ready for you to act and to put your hands on it through this idea that is somehow found its way into your mind out of the millions of different combinations of experiences and thoughts that you could have. You're thinking about starting up I don't even know. You're thinking about starting up a business. Just do it. Just go. These AI tools are so incredible because you can buy a domain name for $9 and with Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, have an entire website built in an hour. And you have started a business and you can start taking orders immediately with Stripe integration. So that's what we're going to be doing. I mean, I have not monetized the Duff Radio brand for a long time because I wanted to build up audience trust, and also because I'm not sure that we had a product that was worth selling. And so the two that I'm the most passionate about are hoodies and vinyl records. The vinyl records would be our mixtape series released. I'm not sure exactly what press I would go through yet. PK put me on an independent vinyl presser that I would like to incorporate through our website. If there's any interest in that, we could definitely do it. I know that Bandcamp and SoundCloud, I think, also do vinyl, but to work with an independent presser, I think would be a lot more special. So if there's interest in that, comment, text me, send an email, and we can make that move happen. The Duff Radio hoodie that I have is a custom black, 100% cotton, will never shrink hoodie from DTLA print. It's super warm, more of a winter vibe, and it has the alternate Dove logo, the blue dove with the black music note as headphones on its head. Drawn by Eugene Sarmiento, the same guy who designed the Duff Radio logo back in the day. So those are going to be for sale. I'll have those integrated in the website. I'm taking all of my projects right now and just pausing them until Fable 5 Access is back. I think that's the move, because Opus 4.8 is not as good at coding, and I don't want to take any of my projects and make them worse, essentially. Work with worse tools. And man, the projects that I have going right now, I wish that I could say something about it, but I'm not going to until it's done, because it will be an absolute game changer. It's going to change the perception that you all have of me. It's going to change the perception that you have of Duff Radio as a brand, as far as what we're capable of, as far as how we help people. And we're just going to keep building and showcasing what we've done once it's actually done. Things that we actually have done in the past, though, let's talk about that, because I never got on the mic and actually discussed it. But went to Kansas City during a recent travel, I believe it was April, and stayed in Lawrence and recorded 2 tracks at Cam's studio. That's OkCasheyy. At his studio, SoundXScape Studios, that he recently opened in downtown Kansas City. We recorded 2 tracks. One is called None to Say. It's produced and engineered by Jace. It features T, OkCasheyy, What You Doing Benny, Gittyman, and I said T, that's STBtheDON. And we have Feel My Pain by Mighty Casual, Tony, Zajikc, and Riley Macc. 2 amazing tracks that we released on all platforms. I did the cover art along with T.S. Shad. We designed that. We have butterflies on the cover to represent T and I bringing babies into the world. And the dove transforming into a phoenix to represent change, to represent the passage of time, to represent transformation, to represent this brand becoming more than what it was when it started. And the growth of this podcast, I mean, the first time that we recorded was 5 years ago. Over 5 years ago, I think, at this point, at Emerald Dreams Lab, back when it was over in Shawnee, Kansas. It's just been a really long journey with a lot of incredibly interesting people